Ever wondered what the real cost of convenience is in our digital world? Tim Jensen, host of Intentionally Inconvenient, dares to question if convenience is truly the enemy of privacy. You'll explore the essence of privacy, why it's worth pursuing, and debunk the myth that it's a lost cause. Together, you will challenge the notion of, I have nothing to hide, and reveal why every bit of your information matters. Remember, all hope is not lost. It's time to reclaim your privacy in this intentionally inconvenient reality.
Hi, and welcome to Intentionally Inconvenient. This is the show where we talk about privacy and how privacy may not necessarily be something that is convenient for you, but a lot of times convenience is the enemy of privacy. Convenience and privacy a lot of times are opposites. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what privacy is, why you should pursue it, and that it's not hopeless, even though you may think it's hopeless, that you may think that your information is already out there, so why bother? Or I have nothing to hide, so why bother? That kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things through the course of these several episodes on privacy and why you should care and why you should work towards it and how all hope is not lost. Again, my name is Tim. I will be your host, and I am excited that you have joined me in this journey. So, privacy really, when you think about it, really isn't the goal. Privacy is a decision. Privacy is not sexy. It's not something that people easily can sell. And the reason is that privacy is like air. Privacy is like water. Privacy is like money. You don't really give it a whole lot of thought until you don't have it. And that is a problem. Just like air and water and money, if you don't have it, privacy can be a real problem. If somebody has breached your privacy, if your information is out there, if your door locks don't work, if your curtains are gone, if your windows are open, if your car doesn't lock, that's a problem. And we need to be able to not worry about so much the idea that we have something to hide, but thinking more of terms of we have something to protect. We want to protect our property. We want to protect our person. We want to protect our family. We want to protect that which we have worked very hard to earn, to accumulate. We want to protect those whom we love. And privacy isn't necessarily the goal in life, because people who go to the extreme can sometimes end up isolating themselves unintentionally by being wrapped up in antisocial. I'm not talking about that. I'm not into the extreme privacy, because I think that we should be social people. We're designed to be social people. Privacy is a decision for a greater end. So, what kind of access are we talking about when we're talking about privacy? First of all, let me back up a second. What is definition of privacy? The definition that I came up with that I think is fantastic, and this isn't necessarily a Webster, this isn't necessarily your dictionary definition, but I think this is a very good workable definition. And that is that privacy is the right to control access to ourselves. Privacy is the right to control access to ourselves. Now, what am I talking about? Physical access. I'm talking about information access. I'm talking about being able to be accessible to our friends versus being accessible to the public versus being accessible to our families. What kind of access? Property ownership, our physical property, our intellectual property, personally identifying information. So some of that stuff you can change, some of it's harder to change. What am I talking about with personally identifying information? We'll get more into that on another episode, but things like your name, your physical location, where you live, your phone number, your email address, your height, your weight, your color, your age, your description, but also where you work, who you associate with, what are your beliefs, that kind of thing. There's a lot of stuff that we'll go over in depth in a future episode. Personal identifying information is the kind of access that is, in my opinion, privileged information and privileged access. It should not be something that I give up very easily. I feel I should question a person a little deeper when they ask me for a personal phone number or an email address. Why do you need that? What is that going to do? Why are you asking me for that? Now, I don't ask everybody that, but I do ask some people that. Moving on, physical distance is also access. Some people we are very close to, some people we're a little bit more public, but not necessarily close to. Some people we would hug, other people we would shake hands with, other people we would wave at. So the physical distance is also that kind of access. So the next question that I came up with is, why should we want to have control to access to ourselves? Why do we want to control the access to ourselves? The first thing that I think of is personal safety. We control access to ourselves for our own personal safety. We don't want people just breaking into our house. We don't want people breaking into our car. And we don't want people doing things to us that we don't want them to do. Physical access, personal safety. The next thing would be the safety of those that we have relationships, our significant other, our spouse, our family, our immediate family, those who we live with, those who we are part of our extended family, perhaps. The safety of those that we have relationships is incredibly important to control access to ourselves to protect those people. Again, it's not so much wanting to hide something. I'll get into that in another episode. But we want to protect those that mean the most to us. Relationships are a big deal in society. The third thing is so that we can, why do we want to control access to ourselves? So that we can exercise our free will that we have in this country. We have a great amount of liberty in our country that we want to be able to give, that we want to be able to access, that we want to be able to exercise. And if we are limiting our access by not giving out information, that can be a very good thing. It should be controlled. We shouldn't just willy-nilly give all kinds of personally identifying information out to everybody that we know. It's not necessary. There needs to be a need to know situation. In today's world, and I've got some of this written down in my notes here, in today's world, many people feel that personal privacy isn't a big deal. After all, we have pretty much given up our personal privacy over time, right? Do you have a privacy model? Or some people call it a threat model. How would you describe your privacy model? Do you post all this kind of stuff on the internet? Do you give information that maybe you shouldn't be? Do you post your phone number online? Do you give out your email address to anybody that asks for it? Or are you a little bit more discriminating? That can be a big deal. Do you give out your passwords? Do you give out your bank account number? Do you give out your credit card number and that 3-digit code on the back and your zip code and all that kind of stuff? Do you just give that out freely, or do you give it out securely so that it can't be misused? Do you want to control your life, or do you want others to take your control of your life? That's a big deal. That kind of concept is something that we'll delve more into in later episodes. I believe that privacy is a process, that privacy must be maintained. I believe that privacy is not free. We have to work for it. And that free and convenient is actually an enemy of privacy. After all, if a product is free that you're just being given, chances are excellent that you are the product. Privacy takes work. It takes all kinds of effort. It's not something that you can just stumble upon by accident. You have to be intentional to maintain your privacy. Freedom requires privacy. If you want freedom, you have to maintain your privacy. It's a huge deal. Here's a core belief that I have when it comes to personal privacy. We should have the decision rights to exercise our own personal freedom as long as it does not infringe on the freedom of others. Let me say that again. We should have the decision rights to exercise our own personal freedom as long as it does not infringe on the freedom of others. If we have given up the decision rights to exercise our personal freedom, we really don't have personal freedom. And the big deal with that is that we are handing that over when we start to hand over personally identifying information, when we start to hand over the keys to our house. Can you imagine? Yeah, no, that's actually, yeah, let me go with that one. Can you imagine buying a hotel? We'll call it Tim's Motel, and there are 16 rooms or there are 32 rooms, and every room that you want to make it convenient for everybody. You want to make it so that it's a good place to stay, but you want to make it convenient for all of your workers. So you make sure that every single room uses the same key. What could possibly go wrong? Think about that. If you're giving out the same key to every room in that hotel, do you think your guests might figure that out? What could possibly go wrong? That's no different than you giving out the same passwords to every single account that you have online. That's no different than maybe giving out the same email address to every single account you have online. We'll talk more about that and what you can do to protect your privacy, to make it much more difficult for the bad people to access your personal lives, to access your personal accounts. And these days, there's a lot that goes on online that we do that we need to protect. We'll get into that. Privacy and freedom go hand in hand. If we don't have personal privacy, then personal freedom is very difficult to exercise. By not keeping our passwords private and diversified, others can access our online accounts and steal from us. By not keeping control of our phone number and our email, others can misuse it, either by spam calls, identity theft, or even stealing and taking ownership of it. Have you ever had an online account that you had someone else took over and all of a sudden you've lost access to it? How many people do you know that have a social media account that was taken over by a hacker because of a mistake that they made? And all of a sudden, all that personal information got into the hands of the hacker. You can bet that's not just something that they're going to mess around with. They're going to sell it, they're going to utilize it. There's a lot that can go wrong. There's a lot that can go wrong. If we don't keep control of our finances, others can steal and misuse our finances. If we don't lock our house, others could enter and steal from you or endanger your safety if your house is not locked, or your car. We don't willingly give out access to our homes, our transportation, our finances, and the people that we have relationships with very easily. And we shouldn't, if we value our privacy and value our freedom in this country. Privacy is like air. We don't appreciate it until we don't have it. Believe it or not, there are people out there that will try to deceive you into giving away your privacy, your personal information for free. Or they'll deceive you into exchanging your privacy for something that you think of as of equal or more value. We'll talk about that. Do you have free email? Do you have free calendar service? Do you have free storage online? Do you have free GPS or maps or whatever? Do you have that all with the same company? Think about this for a second. If someone has giving you free email, and they've given you free GPS, and they've given you free calendar, and they've given you free storage, most of the companies that do that, those companies are reading your email, they're reading your calendar, they're logging where you're going, date, time, place, route, and they are reading your documents. And you're even using probably their word processor, their spreadsheet, their presentation software. You can bet they have software that is reading your information. And when you can observe someone from all kinds of different angles, their schedule for the calendar, their email, you can read their email, you can gather information, where they're going, when they're going there. You can ascertain where they work, you can ascertain where they shop, you can ascertain where they live. That's a lot of access that you've just given away for free. That's a big deal. Here's a related concept. I said this a few minutes ago. If the product is free, then you are the product. Keep that in mind as we go through this. Let's dig into this just a little bit. We've all heard the phrase, there ain't no free lunch. Somebody has to plant the seeds, somebody has to feed the animal, or they have to package it, or they have to ship it, or they have to prepare it, or they have to store it. Things just don't happen on their own. People expect to be paid for their efforts. They have to live too. When someone offers you something for free, keep in mind that they're probably expecting a return on their investment. Free sample, they want you to purchase the next one. Free email, they don't write the code for that email because they're just nice people. More than likely, there are mechanisms in place for them to read, store, and analyze the content of your emails to build a profile on you so that they can cater to you and sell to you, or so that they can give that away to another party or sell that to a third party. And you've probably already agreed to that when you checked off the terms and conditions and said, yes, I agree. All 100 pages of it, 40,000 words that you didn't read. And now they have given away that free television. They want your attention so that they can sell you something. A lot of this has to do with your attention, and we'll get into that in a future episode. Other enemies of privacy, and this is in no particular order. This is not a comprehensive list, but big tech companies, yourself can be an enemy of privacy if you give out information freely, or your family members give out your information freely, or your friends. Data brokers could sell that information. There could be data breaches where all of a sudden hackers have your information and they sell or give away, or there's ransom to be paid for your information. We'll get into that later. Past and present employers could be an enemy to your privacy if they start giving out your information. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it legally, but it is possible. I'm not blaming anybody or anything like that. Surveillance, government surveillance. How many towns have you been in where there are cameras on street corners and they are recording things? Or maybe you're in a store and there's cameras and they're recording things. Or you're going to school and there's cameras and they're recording things. All the surveillance that we have in today's society could be construed as an enemy of privacy. Government is definitely an enemy of privacy. If you have never heard of the NSA or the National Security, I have something, I'll figure it out. The NSA and the revelations back in 2013 that Edward Snowden brought forth, government definitely can be an enemy of privacy. Here's a big one: convenience. We want to make our life easier. We want things to be convenient. But a lot of times, convenience is the enemy of privacy. And we give away things for free for the sake of convenience to make it easy on ourselves. There's a reason why this podcast is called Intentionally Inconvenient. I'll get into a lot of this in future episodes, but there are a lot of benefits to having things be inconvenient for yourself and by proxy others. And keep that in mind. Keeping things separate. Maybe not using the same company for various services. Maybe if you're having your personal banking at one place, you do your business banking at another. Maybe if you're using your phone for your one device for email, you don't use it on another. If you're going to use social media, do it in one place and not on another device. You're less vulnerable if you're intentionally inconvenient. Moving on. Companies where you have an account, they can be an enemy of privacy if they sell off your stuff, your information. Social engineers, these are those people that try to trick you into giving information that you wouldn't have given that isn't necessarily privileged information. It is privileged information, but not to that person. Hackers, your DNS at your home, not using a virtual private network or a VPN. Other things that are enemies of privacy, operating systems like Windows and iOS and Android are all enemies of privacy. They are constantly surveilling you. So let me summarize these main points. We are in a society today where we have to protect our privacy in order to protect our freedoms. And it's not all hopeless. We have not given up permanently information, and we can take actions to change that situation. But it's going to take work, it's going to take effort, and it probably is going to take some finances on your end. There are free ways to do it, but quite frankly, the free ways aren't usually the best ways. So we will get into a lot of these things another time. I'm hoping to be interviewing some people who are people that have taught me about privacy, personal privacy, how to be private, what to do in order to be a person who is not necessarily a stay away and antisocial person, but just someone who is protecting their personally identifying information a little bit better than maybe they did in the past. Even if you're older, you see the gray hair up here, even if you're older, it's still possible to protect your privacy. It's possible to start today, even if you haven't done it in the past. So, privacy isn't necessarily the goal, but it is a decision. It's not sexy, it's hard to sell, but it's necessary because without it, you can really be vulnerable to a lot of people and a lot of things. Until next time, stay intentionally inconvenient. Thanks for listening.
That's all for now from Intentionally Inconvenient, leaving you with a challenge to question the cost of online convenience. If you want to keep learning, subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Your reviews and 5-star ratings help reach more listeners. Until next time, remember, your privacy is never a lost cause. Stay safe, stay private.